There never was a man so empty as the man who was full of himself. Think about that for a minute. Okay, we're always talking about how do we get fulfilled? How do we get the peace of Jesus? How do we get that joy, right? You see people walking around joyful all the time. You're in the middle of chaos and you're wondering, what am I missing? How can I do this, right? Well, I think it starts right here. I mean, we can talk about faith, we can talk about trust, we can talk about hope, we can talk about the fruit of the Spirit, we can talk about all of these things which are all important. We can talk about speaking in tongues, prophecy, all of these things. We can talk about love, but at the end of the day, I think this is where, for ourselves, that we need to start. And that's the absence of pride, right? To take it away. And the opposite of pride is humility, being humble. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord and he will lift you up, right? It talks about it throughout scripture. So what better place for you and for me and for anybody watching this video, anybody you share this with, is to check our pride, to eliminate it as any way that we possibly can, because the root of the pride is the root of every single sin. If you look at it, I mean, and Jesus does an incredible job of making comparisons. I mean, he lumps pride in with some of the worst sins that we can possibly do, right? He lumps, and you're going to see it a little bit later, he lumps pride in with murder and with adultery and with lust and with greed. I mean, the horrible, horrible sins, right? The ones that the world think are worse than the rest of the sins. He puts pride right in the midst of all of those. In fact, Solomon puts pride at the front in some of those cases. Why? Well, the more study I did on this subject, the more that I realized that pride really is the root. I mean, think about this. If you were 100% humble, not a single bit of self-sufficiency, not a single bit of arrogance, you had no pride, do you think sin would be so easy? No. Go study the subject of pride. Go find scripture. Go to your concordance and find all of the scriptures on pride, and not only find them, but read the story, not just the verses about pride, but read the verses before it and the verses after it to kind of give it some context, right? Because everything that we do, from our evil thoughts to unforgiveness, to slander, to gossip, to lying, to be greedy, to commit adultery, right? Fornication, drunkenness, all of the things that Jesus talked about, murder, all of those stem from pride, because if we were not so self-seeking, right? We didn't have that pride, but we could squash it, we wouldn't commit the sins that we do. So that's why I think this is such an important place to start.